The universe underestimated us as young, until they realized we were the elders. The stars shimmered against the endless black of space as the exploration vessel Horizon drifted at the edge of the solar system. Captain Alan Miller stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the main screen. After 3 years in deep space, the crew had grown accustomed to the emptiness. This mission was supposed to be routine: plant monitoring stations beyond Pluto, collect data, and return home. No one had expected visitors. "Captain, the object is slowing down," said Officer Greg Parker from his station. It's changing course, heading straight for us." Miller nodded, keeping his expression calm despite the rapid beating of his heart. "Time to intercept?" 4 minutes, sir." Lisa Green, the ship's diplomatic officer, joined Miller at the viewport. She had trained for first contact scenarios her entire career, but those had always been theoretical exercises. Now, as the unknown vessel grew larger on their screens, theory was becoming reality. "It's beautiful," she whispered. The alien ship resembled a massive silver leaf, its edges rippling with light that shifted through colors humans had no names for. It moved with impossible grace, as if space itself bent to its will rather than the other way around. "All stations remain calm," Miller said over the ship-wide channel. "We are witnessing history. Let's make sure it's the good kind." Dr. Samantha Wells fidgeted with her tablet, recording every second of the encounter. As the Horizon's xenoarchaeologist, she had spent her life studying the possibilities of alien civilizations. Now faced with the real thing, she couldn't help but think of the ancient sites she had excavated on Earth, places that had always hinted at something more. "They're sending a signal," Parker announced. "Audio and some kind of visual data. Our systems are trying to process." The bridge speakers crackled to life. The sound that emerged was like flowing water, musical and structured. Then it shifted, morphed, and became recognizable. "Greetings, younglings of Earth," came a voice that seemed neither male nor female. "We are the Zintari. We have watched your first steps beyond your cradle world with great interest." Miller exchanged glances with Green before responding. "This is Captain Alan Miller of the Earth vessel Horizon. We welcome peaceful contact with your civilization." A soft chime sounded from the alien ship, and the main screen flickered. An image appeared, a being with silvery skin and large, almond-shaped eyes. Its head was hairless, its body slender and tall. "Captain of the Young Ones," the alien said, its mouth moving slightly out of sync with the words, suggesting some kind of translation system. "I am Ambassador Ilori of the Zintari Collective, representatives of the Galactic Council in this sector. We have come to guide the children of Earth into the wider community of stars." Miller straightened his uniform. "We appreciate your offer, Ambassador. However, Earth is a sovereign world with a long history of its own." The alien made a gesture that might have been amusement. "Of course, young one. All worlds believe their history significant. Your species has achieved much in its brief time. Our records show your civilization has existed for barely a few thousand years. Quite impressive for such new arrivals." Dr. Wells stepped forward, unable to contain herself. "Excuse me, Ambassador, but human civilization has existed for at least 10,000 years. We have structures on Earth dating back to before our written history." The alien tilted its head. "A common misunderstanding among emerging species. Simple stone arrangements are not true indicators of advanced civilization." "I wouldn't call them simple," Wells replied, pulling up images on her tablet. "These are the Great Pyramids of Egypt, constructed with mathematical precision that we still find remarkable. And this is Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex in Turkey that dates back over 11,000 years." Ambassador Ilori leaned closer to whatever device was transmitting the image. "Interesting primitive constructions, typical of developing worlds." "Primitive?" Wells couldn't hide her surprise. The astronomical alignments at Göbekli Tepe required sophisticated understanding of star movements. And these underwater structures off the coast of Japan, they're over 8,000 years old. For the first time, the aliens' fluid movements stilled. 8,000? You have confirmed this dating?" "Multiple times, using various methods, Wells said. And we have cave paintings and carved artifacts dating back 30 to 40,000 years. The bridge fell silent as the alien ambassador seemed to consult with someone off-screen. When Ilori returned to view, there was a subtle change in posture. Captain Miller, we would like to extend an invitation. The Galactic Council, an alliance of 17 spacefaring civilizations, wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth. As an emerging world, you would be granted provisional membership, with full rights to be earned over time. Over time? Green asked. How much time? A few of your centuries, perhaps, Ilori replied. Most young species require guidance before they are ready for the responsibilities of full council membership. Over the next hours, the initial meeting evolved into a series of discussions. The Zintari explained the structure of the Galactic Council, the technologies they might share, and the rules Earth would need to follow. Throughout it all, Dr. Wells noticed how the aliens reacted whenever she mentioned Earth's ancient sites. A slight pause, a quick exchange of glances among their delegation. When she showed them images of ancient texts from Sumeria, the oldest known writing on Earth, Ambassador Ilori asked to see the originals. These symbols, the ambassador said, tracing a finger over one tablet's image. They resemble, but no, that would be impossible. 6 weeks later, Earth prepared for the arrival of the full Galactic Council delegation. News of alien contact had sent shockwaves through human society, but most had welcomed the prospect of joining a larger community. As Dr. Wells packed artifacts for the cultural exchange exhibition, she received a private message from a junior, Zintari scientist she had befriended. Your ancient sites, the message read. The council races are conducting their own dating tests. They do not believe your claims of age. If proven true, it would make human civilization older than 15 of the 17 council races. Only the Zintari and the Morax have histories extending beyond 12,000 years. Wells sat back, staring at the message. Why would the age of human civilization matter so much to these advanced aliens? What difference could a few thousand years make to species that traveled between stars? Unless, she thought suddenly, it wasn't just about age. It was about order, about who came first and what that might mean. She looked at the ancient Sumerian tablet on her desk, its symbols seeming to shift in the light. For the first time, she wondered if they weren't recording trade or telling stories. What if they were leaving a message? A message meant to be found when humanity finally reached the stars again. The universe underestimated us as young, until they realized we were the elders. 6 months had passed since first contact. Earth had changed. Ships from the Galactic Council now orbited the planet. Alien diplomats walked the streets of major cities. Humans were learning about life beyond their world. John Rivera adjusted his tie as he prepared to enter the Grand Hall. The Council had invited him to present Earth's ancient history at their symposium. As one of Earth's leading archaeologists, he had studied prehistoric civilizations for 30 years. Now aliens would hear what he knew. Nervous? Asked Dr. Wells, who had become something of a celebrity after that first contact aboard the Horizon. A little, Rivera admitted. I'm about to tell advanced aliens that humans might be older than they thought. Not exactly what they invited us to the galactic community to hear. Wells smiled. Just tell the truth, John. That's all we can do. The symposium hall reminded Rivera of the United Nations, but much larger. 17 different species sat in curved rows. Some looked almost human. Others seemed more like plants or giant insects. All watched with interest as Rivera took his place at the center. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Thank you for this chance to share Earth's history with you. Rivera started with what humans knew for certain. He showed images of ancient cities, tools, and art. He explained how carbon dating and other methods helped determine their age. These structures at Göbekli Tepe were built approximately 11,600 years ago, he said, pointing to stone pillars with carved animals. That's almost 12,000 Earth years of continuous civilization. A murmur spread through the alien delegates. Rivera noticed several using their translation devices to confirm what he had said. And these mathematical tablets from Babylon show advanced understanding of geometry and algebra from over 4,000 years ago, he continued. The ancient Greeks were calculating the size of Earth with remarkable accuracy more than 2,200 years ago. The Zintari ambassador, Ilori, leaned forward. And you can verify these dates with certainty? Yes, Ambassador. Multiple dating methods confirm them, Rivera replied. We also have evidence of complex social structures going back even further. Cave paintings showing communal hunting and religious ceremonies date back 30,000 to 40,000 years. One of the delegates, a being with blue-green skin and 4 arms, stood up. This timeline suggests human civilization is older than 15 of our 17 council species. Only the Zintari and Morax have recorded histories beyond 6,000 years. Rivera nodded. That appears to be the case, yes. The hall filled with quiet conversation. Rivera could tell his information had caused some kind of stir, though he didn't fully understand why. These were species that could travel between stars. Why would they care how old human civilization was? Across the galaxy on the Zintari homeworld, Carol Baker worked in a dimly lit archive. As a linguist, she had been granted access to ancient Zintari texts to help build better translation programs. The Zintari writing system was beautiful, but complex, with symbols that changed meaning based on tiny variations. Baker had been working for hours when she noticed something odd. A symbol in an ancient text looked familiar. Not Zintari familiar, but Earth familiar. It resembled a figure from the Nazca lines in Peru. She kept reading, translating slowly. The text spoke of beings called the First Ones, teachers who had visited many worlds long ago. They had shared knowledge, helped develop writing systems, and then disappeared. According to the text, these First Ones had come in silver seeds that fell from the sky and had taught the early Zintari about stars, farming, and medicine. Baker's hands trembled as she pulled up images from Earth's ancient artifacts. The similarities were striking. The descriptions of these First Ones, tall beings with skin like polished stone and eyes that held the light of stars, matched descriptions from Sumerian texts about the Anunnaki, beings their ancestors had called gods. She reached for her communicator. This information needed to get back to Earth immediately. Meanwhile, on Earth, military officer Kevin Doyle watched the alien visitors with growing suspicion. As head of security for the archaeological site at Göbekli Tepe, he had noticed the council representatives taking more than a normal interest in the ancient stones. Late one night, he caught 3 Morax scientists carefully removing samples from the buried layers of the site. When confronted, they tried to hide their work. This is a protected historical site, Doyle said firmly, his hand resting on his weapon. Explain yourselves. The lead Morax scientist, a tall, thin being with gray skin and large eyes, seemed uncomfortable. We meant no harm. We were simply confirming the age of these structures. You have access to all our research data. Why secretly take samples? The alien hesitated. Because we needed to be certain. The council, some members have theories about Earth that required verification. What theories? Doyle demanded. The Morax looked at its companions before answering. That Earth might be more important than we initially believed. That it might hold answers about our own origins. Doyle frowned. What do you mean? Many council species have legends about teachers from the stars who helped our ancient ancestors. Beings who shared knowledge and then vanished, the Morax explained. The timing of their appearance in our histories, the symbols they left behind, they match too closely across too many worlds to be coincidence. And this connects to Earth how? Because, the Morax said quietly, the symbols these teachers used appear in your oldest ruins. The knowledge they shared exists in your oldest texts, and they vanished from our worlds just as human civilization was beginning to flourish on yours. Doyle stared at the alien. Are you suggesting these teachers were human? We don't know, the Morax admitted. But the council is divided. Some believe humans might be descendants of those who once guided us all. Others fear what this might mean if true. As Doyle escorted the aliens from the site, his mind raced. If what they said was even partially true, human history was not what they had believed, and humanity's place in the galaxy was far more complex than anyone had imagined. Back at the Council Symposium, Rivera concluded his presentation. The silence in the hall was heavy with unasked questions. Finally, a Zintari elder rose. "Professor Rivera, if humans have existed as a civilization for so long, why did you advance so slowly? Why did it take you thousands of years to develop space travel when younger species achieved it in mere centuries?" Rivera considered the question. "I don't know. Perhaps we took a different path. Or perhaps something happened in our past that we have forgotten." As he left the stage, Rivera couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens already knew more about human history than humans themselves did. The universe underestimated us as young, until they realized we were the elders. The Antarctic wind howled across the ice as the joint human-alien expedition team set up their camp. After weeks of scanning the thick ice sheet, they had detected something unusual buried deep below. Now they prepared to drill down and discover what lay beneath. Dr. Patricia Morris pulled her thermal suit tighter against the cold. As the team's geneticist, she wasn't used to field work, especially in such harsh conditions. But after what Carol Baker had discovered in the Zintari archives, every scientist with security clearance wanted to be part of this mission. "The drill is ready," called out Nari, a Morax engineer. "We'll reach the object in approximately 6 hours. Captain Ben Foster nodded. "Then we'd better get some rest. Whatever's down there has been waiting for thousands of years. It can wait a few more hours." Morris couldn't sleep. The information they had gathered over the past month swirled in her mind. Baker's discovery of the first ones in Zintari texts, Doyle's confrontation with alien scientists at Göbekli Tepe, Rivera's presentation that had caused such a stir in the council, and now this, an object of unknown origin buried under 2 miles of Antarctic ice. According to the scans, it was perfectly preserved and clearly not natural. The ice surrounding it had been dated to over 50,000 years ago. The drilling started at dawn. By midday, they had created a shaft wide enough for a small team to descend. Morris joined Foster, Nari, and Alori, who had insisted on representing the Zintari. As they were lowered down the shaft, the ice walls glowed blue in their lights. Then, suddenly, the shaft opened into a vast cave. Their headlamps couldn't reach the distant walls. The ice formed around it. Nari explained, voice filled with awe. The heat from the object melted the ice, then it refroze, creating this pocket. And there it was, a spacecraft unlike anything humans had built, and different from any council design. It was sleek and dark, with curves that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Despite being 50,000 years old, it looked as if it had been built yesterday. "It's intact," Foster whispered. "How is that possible?" They approached cautiously. The ship was not small, perhaps 200 feet long and 50 feet high. Its surface showed no signs of damage or age. Ilori moved forward, touching the hull with a gloved hand. "This material, we've seen it before, in artifacts left by the first ones." A panel on the side of the ship suddenly lit up, glowing with symbols that shifted and changed. "It's active," Morris gasped. "After all this time, it's still working." The symbols stabilized, forming patterns that looked strangely familiar. "Those look like early human writing," Foster said, leaning closer. "But older, more complex." The panel slid open, revealing an entrance. Lights activated inside, illuminating a corridor that led deeper into the ship. After setting up monitoring equipment and reporting their find to the surface team, the 4 explorers entered the vessel. Inside, they found rooms filled with technology far beyond even the Council's understanding. Strange devices, control panels, and what appeared to be living quarters. In what seemed to be the ship's control center, a large spherical device activated. As they entered, it projected a 3-dimensional image, a map of the galaxy with certain star systems highlighted. "Those are Council homeworlds," Ilori said slowly. "All 17 of them, plus hundreds more." Morris studied another room that contained what looked like medical equipment. On the walls were diagrams of different species, including what appeared to be early humans. These are genetic sequences, she realized, examining the displays. They're showing genetic engineering. Foster joined her, his expression troubled. Are you saying this ship belonged to genetic engineers? People who modified species? Not just any species, Morris said, pointing to a particular sequence. This is human DNA, and this... She pointed to another display. This appears to be Zintari DNA, and Morax and others I don't recognize. Ilori moved closer, eyes wide. Our oldest legends speak of the first ones reshaping us, guiding our evolution. We always assumed it was myth. Maybe it wasn't, Morris whispered. As they continued exploring, they found a chamber containing preserved tissue samples from dozens of species, including humans. Morris carefully collected some for analysis, her mind racing with possibilities. Back at Earth's main genetic research facility, Morris worked day and night analyzing the samples from the ship. What she discovered shook her to her core. The council representatives need to see this, she told the emergency meeting of Earth's contact committee. All of them. When the council members gathered, Morris displayed her findings on the main screen. These are genetic comparisons between modern humans, the ancient human DNA from the ship, and samples from 17 council species, she explained. As you can see, there are specific markers in all council species that show signs of deliberate genetic modification, modifications that match patterns found in certain isolated human populations. The room erupted in shocked conversations. Morris waited for quiet before continuing. More importantly, the ancient human DNA shows a level of genetic engineering far beyond what we see in council species. These ancient humans weren't just modified. They were designing themselves, evolving deliberately. A Morax scientist stood up. Are you suggesting humans engineered our species? Not modern humans, Morris clarified, but possibly their ancestors, an earlier, more advanced human civilization that existed over 50,000 years ago. The evidence suggests they traveled throughout the galaxy, possibly uplifting other species. On the distant world of Proxima Centauri, Earth's first colony, archaeologist Frank Howard made his own discovery. His team had been excavating what they thought were natural formations on the planet's surface. Instead, they found ruins. These structures predate human settlement, Howard told his excited team as they uncovered a wall covered in symbols. And, look at this writing. The symbols on the wall were remarkably similar to Proto-Sumerian script from Earth. Howard photographed everything, sending the images back to Earth for analysis. The implications were becoming clear, and they were staggering. Humans weren't newcomers to the galactic stage. They might be descendants of an ancient, advanced human civilization that once spread throughout the stars, a civilization that had possibly helped other species evolve and develop. As word spread throughout the council worlds, reactions varied widely. Some species welcomed the possibility of a connection to humanity. Others feared what it might mean if humans reclaimed their ancestors' power and knowledge. On the Zintari homeworld, the High Council met in emergency session. If humans truly are descendants of the first ones, one elder said, then everything changes. They are not children to be guided. They may be the elders who once guided us all. Another elder shook his head. Or they may be dangerous. The first ones disappeared suddenly. What if there was a reason? What if they destroyed themselves, or were destroyed because of what they were doing? Back on the Antarctic ship, Foster made one final discovery, a sealed room that had initially resisted all attempts to enter. When it finally opened, they found something unexpected, a single stasis pod, still active after 50,000 years. And inside, perfectly preserved, was a being that looked almost but not quite human. The universe underestimated us as young, until they realized we were the elders. News of the being in the stasis pod spread quickly. Earth governments tried to keep it secret, but rumors flew across both human and alien networks. The council called An emergency meeting demanding access to the Antarctic ship and its sleeping occupant. Captain Ben Foster stood guard outside the medical facility where the being was kept. No one knew if it was alive or just perfectly preserved. Its pod remained sealed, as scientists feared that opening it might cause damage after so many thousands of years. "Captain Foster," called a voice. It was Ilori, the Zintari ambassador. "The council historians have arrived. They say they have information about your discovery." Foster nodded and led Ilori into the facility. Inside, a group of solemn-faced aliens waited. They represented the oldest and most respected historical authorities from each council species. "We have decided it is time to reveal what we know," said an elderly Morax with pale blue skin. "What we have hidden for generations." Dr. Morris joined them, her face showing signs of too little sleep and too much coffee. "Hidden? What have you hidden?" The Morax elder gestured, and a younger assistant activated a device that projected images into the air. Most galactic civilizations were indeed uplifted by a mysterious species between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago. We called them different names: the architects, the shapers, the sky teachers, but they were the same beings. The images showed ancient artifacts from different worlds, all bearing similar symbols to those found in the Antarctic ship. They visited many worlds, sharing knowledge, modifying species to develop intelligence faster, teaching basics of language, agriculture, and astronomy, continued the elder. Then, approximately 75,000 years ago, they vanished suddenly. Foster leaned forward. "What happened to them?" "We don't know for certain," replied the elder. "For millennia, we assumed they had either gone extinct or evolved beyond physical form. Some believed they would return someday. Others hoped they never would." "Why would you hope that?" asked Morris. A different council historian, a reptilian being with feathered crests, spoke up. "Because not all interactions with the architects were beneficial. Some species were used as test subjects. Others were modified against their will. There are records of rebellion, of conflict. The images changed to show what appeared to be ancient depictions of war. Spacecraft in battle, worlds burning." "Think there was a war," Foster said slowly. "A war that the architects, or whatever they called themselves, lost." "It is one theory," admitted Ilori. "And if humans are their descendants," Morris interrupted, "that would explain the genetic bottleneck in human history. Around 75,000 years ago, the human population on Earth dropped to just a few thousand individuals. We've always attributed it to a supervolcano eruption. But what if it was something else? What if it was survivors fleeing to Earth?" The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity hadn't evolved on Earth. They had fled there, the last survivors of a once mighty civilization after a devastating conflict. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Commander Olivia Wright of Earth's Defense Forces tracked unusual movements. Several council ships had broken formation, heading toward Earth's most ancient and secretive archaeological site, a chamber beneath the Sphinx that even most humans didn't know existed. "Scramble intercept teams," she ordered. "No one accesses that site without authorization." Her second-in-command looked concerned. "Commander, those are council diplomatic vessels. If we intercept them, if they're diplomatic, they should have asked permission." Wright replied firmly. "Something's going on, and I want to know what it is." Wright reached the Sphinx site just as her team surrounded the council ships. 6 aliens had already reached the desert floor carrying equipment toward the ancient monument. "This area is restricted," Wright announced through her suit's speakers. "State your purpose." The lead alien, a tall Zintari, turned slowly. "Commander, Wright. I am Soren, head of the Council's Historical Preservation Committee. We are here on urgent business." "What business would that be?" Wright asked, keeping her weapon lowered but ready. "The chamber beneath this structure contains information vital to understanding the current crisis," Soren explained. "We believe it may be one of several repositories left by the architects." Wright frowned. "If that's true, why not ask permission? Why the secrecy?" "Because," said Soren, "there are factions within the council who would prefer such knowledge remain buried. who fear what might happen if humans reclaim their heritage. Before Wright could respond, scientist Daniel Clark arrived, breathing hard from running across the sand. "Commander, you need to see this." Clark showed her his tablet. On it were images from multiple alien mythologies, paintings, carvings, and texts from a dozen worlds, all depicting a great war among the stars. "I've been working with friendly alien researchers," Clark explained. "We found references in multiple alien mythologies to a devastating conflict that occurred roughly 75,000 years ago, exactly when humans experienced their genetic bottleneck event." Wright looked from the tablet to the Sphinx, standing silent and enigmatic as it had for thousands of years. "What do you think is down there, Soren?" "Answers," replied the Zentari simply. "Perhaps the true history of both your people and ours." After careful consideration, Wright allowed a joint team to enter the chamber. Ancient mechanisms, dormant for millennia, began to activate as they approached. Walls that had appeared solid revealed hidden doors. Passages opened into rooms filled with technology similar to that found in the Antarctic ship. In the central chamber, they found a device unlike any other, a crystalline structure that hummed with energy when Clark approached it. "It's responding to his DNA," Morris observed, having joined the expedition. "It recognizes him as human." The crystal projected a holographic image, a being similar to the one in the stasis pod, but clearly speaking. No sound emerged, but symbols appeared beneath the image. "It's a message," Clark realized, "but we can't read it." "I can," said Soren, stepping forward. "This language appears in fragments on many council worlds. We've studied it for centuries." As Soren translated, the truth emerged piece by piece. The beings, who called themselves the progenitors, had indeed traveled the galaxy, uplifting species and establishing outposts. They had been human, or at least the ancestors of humans, though heavily modified through their own genetic engineering. But something had gone wrong. Some progenitors had seen themselves as gods, treating other species as experiments or servants. Others had opposed this view, fighting for the freedom and dignity of all sentient beings. The resulting civil war had nearly destroyed them. The faction that believed in equality and freedom had eventually prevailed, but at terrible cost. Most of their civilization lay in ruins. Many worlds they had visited had been devastated. The survivors made a choice, Soren translated, his voice growing quiet. Rather than rebuild their empire, they decided to start anew. They deliberately shed much of their technology and knowledge, choosing to live simply on a beautiful blue world they had discovered earlier. "Earth," whispered Morris. "Yes," confirmed Soren. They modified themselves once more, removing certain genetic enhancements, hoping their descendants would evolve along a different path, one that might lead to wisdom rather than merely power. The message ended with a warning and a hope that if humanity ever reached the stars again, they would do so with greater wisdom and compassion than their ancestors. As the team emerged from the chamber, they found the world had changed. Council. Ships filled Earth's skies. Some had come in peace, others with more hostile intent. The great deception was over. The truth was out. Humanity wasn't a young species being welcomed to the galactic community. They were the returning elders whose ancestors had shaped that community long ago, and not everyone was happy to see them return. The universe underestimated us as young until they realized we were the elders. Earth's skies had never been so crowded. Hundreds of alien ships hung in orbit, their intentions unclear. Some council species called for alliance with humanity, eager to learn from the descendants of their ancient teachers. Others demanded Earth's quarantine, fearful of what humans might become if they reclaimed their ancestors' power. And a few, a desperate, frightened few, had decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist at all. Admiral Paul Jenkins stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, Earth's newest and most advanced warship. Reports flowed in from around the planet. A small group of council vessels had attacked research outposts in Africa and South America. Others were heading toward the EA, Antarctic site where the ancient ship and its mysterious occupant remained. All defense units at full alert, Jenkins ordered. Protect the research sites at all costs, but avoid firing first if possible. We need time. Time for what, sir? Asked his second-in-command. Time for Maria Foster to finish her work, Jenkins replied, looking at the countdown on his screen. At the Great Sphinx, archaeologist Maria Foster worked frantically. After the initial discovery beneath the monument, she had found something even more significant, a hidden section of the chamber that responded only to her specific genetic signature. You have progenitor genes, Dr. Morris had told her after running tests. More than most humans, the chamber must be keyed to recognize certain genetic sequences. Now Foster stood before a wall covered in symbols that shifted and changed as she watched. They formed patterns that somehow made sense to her, though she had never seen them before. It's a repository, she told the team working with her. A complete record of human history, our true history, and all the knowledge the progenitors chose to preserve. Soren, the Zintari historian, looked amazed. Can you access it? I think so, Foster replied. But I need to be careful. This isn't just information. It's a message from our ancestors. They must have had a reason for hiding it, for waiting until we reached the stars again before revealing it. As Foster worked, the first shots were fired in orbit. A group of Council warships had moved against Earth's defensive line. The battle had begun. We need that information now, urged Commander Wright, who had joined the team at the Sphinx. If there's anything in there that can help us. Rushing could destroy everything, Foster insisted. The repository is delicate. It was designed to transfer information gradually, to avoid overwhelming the recipient. In Antarctica, the stasis pod finally opened. The being inside, who looked almost human but with subtle differences, awoke after 50,000 years. Captain Ben Foster was the first person it saw. Where am I? It asked, in a language that sounded strangely like ancient Sumerian. How long has it been? Through a hastily adapted translation device, Ben explained the situation. The being, who called itself Aaron, listened with growing concern. History repeats, Aaron said sadly. We hoped it would be different this time. At the Sphinx, Maria Foster finally unlocked the repository. But what she found wasn't what anyone expected. There were no weapons schematics, no advanced technology that could save Earth from attack. Instead, there was a message, a long, detailed explanation of why the progenitors had made their choice. They had been powerful once, spreading across the galaxy, reshaping worlds and species as they saw fit. But their power had led to arrogance, and arrogance to conflict. The war that followed had nearly destroyed everything. The survivors had made a conscious choice. Rather than rebuild their civilization and risk repeating the cycle, they chose to begin again. They modified themselves, removing certain genetic enhancements and technological knowledge, preserving only what they believed would lead to wisdom rather than mere power. They wanted us to evolve differently, Foster explained as she read more of the message. To develop empathy and cooperation alongside intelligence. They hoped that when we eventually reached the stars again, we would do so as caretakers rather than conquerors. The repository contained knowledge, but it was knowledge about sustainable energy, medical advances that could benefit all species, methods for restoring damaged ecosystems. There were no weapons, no means of domination. In orbit, the battle intensified. Earth's ships were outnumbered but fought bravely. Then suddenly, the ancient Antarctic ship rose from the ice, piloted by Aaron. It moved with impossible grace, positioning itself between Earth and the attacking forces. Aaron broadcast a message to all ships, speaking in the ancient progenitor, language that all Council species would recognize from their own histories. This conflict dishonors the sacrifice of those who came before, Aaron's message stated. If you have come seeking the return of the progenitor's weapons and empire, you will find nothing here. That path was abandoned for a reason. On Earth, Maria Foster completed her connection with the repository. The knowledge flowed into her mind, not overwhelming her, but integrating gradually. She understood now why the progenitors had waited, why the chamber had responded to her genetics. They seeded Earth with modified versions of themselves, she explained to the others. Designed to evolve naturally but with certain potentials. I'm not special, I just happen to have more of those original genes than most people. We all carry them to some degree. Using the knowledge from the repository, Foster sent a message of her own, not just to the ships in orbit, but to every council world. It contained the true history of the progenitors, their rise and fall, and their final choice. Not to rule, but to begin again. Not to conquer, but to learn. We are not here to reclaim any empire, her message concluded. We are here to build something better, together with all of you. The progenitors were not gods. They were flawed beings who made terrible mistakes but ultimately chose wisdom over power. As their descendants, we choose the same. One by one, the attacking ships ceased fire. Some withdrew. Others remained, uncertain. At the Antarctic site, engineer Laura Wilson worked with Aaron to understand the ancient technology. We need to be careful, she insisted. We can't repeat the mistakes of the past. We need to advance thoughtfully, not rush to reclaim everything at once. Aaron nodded. That was the hope. That humanity would learn wisdom before reclaiming power. In the weeks that followed, a new order began to form. Most council species accepted the truth and welcomed peaceful relations with Earth. The knowledge from the repository was shared freely, benefiting all worlds. The process of integrating humanity into the galactic community began again. Not as children to be guided, but as equals with a shared legacy. Captain Ethan Brooks stood on the observation deck of the new joint human-alien space station orbiting Earth. Below him, the blue planet turned peacefully. Above, the stars beckoned. You know, he said to the young Zintari diplomat beside him, the universe's greatest misconception wasn't underestimating our age. It was assuming that being ancient was the same as being wise. The Zintari nodded. True wisdom comes not from how long you have existed, but from how well you have learned from your past. Together, they watched as ships from Earth and the Council worlds formed a ceremonial pattern in orbit. Not a display of power, but a symbol of unity and hope for the future. Somewhere among the stars, other repositories waited to be found. Other pieces of humanity's complex history remained to be discovered. But for now, Earth and its cosmic cousins had taken the first steps toward building something new, something that honored the best of their shared past while avoiding its darkest mistakes. The universe had underestimated humans as young only to discover they were the elders. But in the end, age mattered less than the wisdom to use whatever time you had well.